Hey guys, I am the Seaman235 and I am back with another video. And yes, it is that time. We're going to be talking about Sonic. However, we are not going to be talking about Sonic Frontiers. I will save that for a separate video, but I do want to do something for Frontiers before it comes out. Something for the franchise, specifically. Keep in mind that Sonic Frontiers might very well be a new era for Sonic. Something that is entirely different. It's not the boost, it's not adventure, it's basically like nothing we've ever seen before. So, I want to tackle my thoughts and opinions on all of the games I've played, the series as a whole, talk about how I got into Sonic. So, you know, a retrospective, a historical retrospective. My history, personally. Not the history of the franchise, because if I did that, I would... Oh god, I would never be done. I would never be done, holy shit. The history of this franchise is fucked! That aside, I want to go over my history with the franchise, because believe it or not, and I know it may shock you, but I am actually a fan of this blue prick. I actually really like his games, and sure, there's a lot of stuff I don't, and we'll be talking about them, but I kind of want to go into why I got into the franchise and talk about each individual game I've played. I will mention games I haven't played if they come up. Some of them even may surprise you, but I want to go over like which ones are some of my favorites, which ones I despise, why I like the franchise, what I like about each specific entry, what I like about the franchise and each era. You get the idea. So I figured, the only time I've really done that is a really old Sonic retrospective me and my friend Zach made many, many years ago with a really shitty laptop audio, which I think I even comment on in my video. Don't watch that video, it's terrible. I'll still keep it up, I guess, because I'm interested in keeping it just so I can see my opinions back then to my opinions now, but it is so outdated, it's so crappy, and, you know, I figured if I'm doing a retrospective, I need to go over my history, not someone else's, so sorry, Zach. You can share your history in a separate video. I'm okay with that if you want to join me for that, but this is my channel. I feel I owe it to my fans to, you know, granted, I know I don't have many fans, but I have over 200 subs. There's clearly people watching, and I feel I owe it to you guys to talk about that, because I don't really get to talk about older games much. I mean, I mentioned how I love Star Wars Battlefront 2, but, you know, the original one from 2005, but I've never talked about it. I mentioned how I love Sonic Generations, but I've never talked about why. This is basically going to fix that for the Sonic franchise, and I might do this for other franchises, and since Sonic Frontiers is coming out next month, early next month, I figure there is no better time than now. I'm going to be splitting this into 3 parts, but I will have a complete version eventually. I don't know when. Don't rush me. But I'm going to be separating it into the eras I deem make sense. So, basically, I'm going to be starting with the classic era, the adventure/Dark Age era, the not meta era, but the boost era, and basically go up to Sonic Frontiers, really, and with all of the games I've played. I haven't played everything. I will mention some games, some major exclusions that I'm going to be making because I haven't played them. I will mention them in time, but bear with me, bear with me. Also, I do not have footage for every game, so I apologize if I can't show much footage. If I can try and get someone else's, though I really don't like to do that, but I can always credit them for the footage in the description. I will try to get my own footage as well. I have footage of most of the main Sonic games, so I should be able to do that for at least the HD ones and the adventure games, and the classic games are definitely going to be very easy to get footage for. It's just, you'll get it as I go on, so let's just not waste any more time. Let's just get started. So, before I get into each individual game, I should talk about how I got into Sonic. And it was through Sonic X. I, like a good chunk of people, got into Sonic because of Sonic X. Because that was airing at the time. I was watching 4Kids stuff. I was watching Yu-Gi-Oh! I was watching Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2003. I was watching, not so much Pokemon. I know Pokemon was on 4Kids at the time. This was around the time they were shifting to the Pokemon Company dubbing with the new voice actress for Ash, which I'm not so hot on. I know she's gotten better, but I still prefer Veronica Taylor, but oh well. That aside, I was watching 4Kids stuff, and one of those, of course, was Sonic X. I knew about Sonic beforehand. It was kind of hard not to. I knew he was a video game character, but I didn't know much about his games. I didn't know much about his origins. I knew most of what I knew from Sonic X. I remember when I was younger, I always used to speculate just from screenshots of stuff like from classic Sonic or Sonic R, imagining what they would be, and then them not being even remotely what I think. But, of course, you know, I was much younger. I was, like, in elementary school, so of course I'm not going to be as educated as I am now. I wanted to play the video games because I was a fan of Sonic X, and I had friends in elementary school and outside of school who were fans of Sonic. So, what was the first game I played? Shadow the Hedgehog. Yeah. Yeah. The one that says damn. That was my introduction to the games. And as a kid, I really loved it. It was one of my favorite games growing up. And yeah, you can tell me how sad that is, but I was a kid. Leave me alone. Maybe it's why I have a softer spot for it than a lot of other people do for that game, because I know a lot of people hate Shadow, and I'm not particularly hot on that game now. But when I was younger, I loved playing it, and I grew up with it, and I do have somewhat of a soft spot for it. I don't think it's actually as bad as people say it is. It's not a good game, but, you know, back then, I loved it. It had all of the voice cast I was familiar with. It was gritty and edgy, and Shadow was emo and cool, because I was a 2000s kid. I really liked dark and edgy shit. Now I love Shadow for a completely different reason. But beforehand, I liked Shadow just because of his design and because he was cool. And keep in mind, I was a kid at the time, so of course, you know. But yeah, after Shadow the Hedgehog, eventually, Zach, who was in elementary school with me, he was one of the friends I talked to about Sonic, he eventually got me into the classic Sonic games. I got Sonic Mega Collection Plus. I still have my copy for PlayStation 2. I didn't get very far. In fact, fun fact, I didn't beat most of the classic games until 2021, with the exception of Sonic CD and Sonic 2, though with Sonic 2, I think I used the level select, so whether you want to count that or not, that's up for debate. But I did beat Sonic 2, I did beat Sonic CD, but I, for the life of me, could never beat Sonic 3K until many, many years later. And I know that sounds pathetic, but apparently that isn't actually as far-fetched. There's a lot of times where I've heard a lot of kids play the classic Sonic games, could not get past, like, the second level in each game, and then just give up and come back to it every little bit, and then eventually they beat it, like, 20 years later. Like, whether it be Sonic 1 with Marble Zone after Green Hill, or Chemical Plant after, though I was able to make it past, eventually. It took me a long, long time to get past the liquid section of Chemical Plant. You know the one from Act 2. I'll put it on screen just to remind you, so you can have PTSD. But yeah, Act 2 of Chemical Plant was the wall in Sonic 2. Hydro City was for some people in Sonic 3. Not so much, it wasn't so much for me after I realized, oh wait, no, I'm not supposed to play this like Labyrinth, I'm supposed to play this, you know, like a Sonic game, because it's actually fast. Like, this is a water stage that doesn't suck. So, it's okay to actually go fast now. Uh, but yeah, I, like many others, had a hard time beating them, and it's just because I didn't really know much about how to take advantage of the physics and momentum. I just sort of played Sonic because I enjoyed playing him, but I couldn't get a feel for him as a kid like I can now. There's a lot of people like that I'm hearing. A lot of people who grew up with the games but didn't beat any of them until many, many years later. At least for the classic games. Not so much for the 3D titles, because the 3D titles aren't as complex when it comes to their physics and momentum, because the physics basically are the gameplay for those games, whereas with Sonic Adventure and the Boost games, they're a bit more simple in how they run. Not to say they don't have their own momentum or physics, but like they're simple in how they control and play. Their goals on how to keep speed is a bit different. It's much more of it's much more trial and error-y in some ways, but also the trial and error isn't as punishing. It's hard to describe, but yeah, I had a much easier time with the 3D Sonic games, and it's why I actually prefer Sonic in 3D, when Sonic in 3D is good. So not Sonic 06, but yeah, that was basically how I grew up with the franchise. It started with Sonic X, me getting into Sonic X and having friends who were into Sonic at the time, like Zach and another friend of mine. I don't know if I should mention him by name, I don't know if he would want that, but he actually still lives around here. I talk to him on occasion, and he was into Shadow as well. Over the course of time, I started playing other Sonic games. I played Sonic Riders, I played Sonic Heroes, the PlayStation 2 version. I don't know where that came from, I'm sorry. But yeah, I started playing a bunch of Sonic games for the PlayStation 2. Eventually I got some games on the DS. Eventually I got games on the Wii. Eventually I got games on a whole manner of things. And I did eventually drop out of Sonic, because, you know, eventually as a kid you gain interest in other stuff. But I came back to Sonic around 2011, 2012. It was around 2012. It was before the 3DS version came out, and I believe the 3DS version of Generations came out in 2012. It came out early 2012. So, I played Generations around that time, and that was what got me back into Sonic. I started catching up on some games I missed, like Sonic Colors, which I'm shocked I missed, because I was excited for it, but I also kind of, like, I was excited for it because I played Unleashed, and I liked Unleashed. So you think I would want to play Colors, but I just didn't for some reason. I guess money was tight, or I just was interested in other things, but eventually I played Colors. I even eventually got into SA2. I got it on the GameCube, even though the HD version was announced right as I got it. But I got the better version, which is the GameCube version, so... eventually I started raising Chow with my friends. I went back to Sonic Adventure, which I did play before I played Generations, I believe. But I couldn't get past Emerald Coast because of DX's glitches, you know, the problems with the collision on the loop-de-loop, and I sort of gave up on it. I eventually came back to it. Took me a while to finish compared to Adventure 2 because of Big, because it's always fucking big. But yeah, eventually I did finish Sonic Adventure as well, and of course, you know, I played other Sonic games as well. You know, I went back to Unleashed. I played the HD version of Unleashed, and, you know, that's basically all she wrote. I've been keeping up with the franchise ever since. I kept up with Sonic Lost World. I have a bit of history with that game as well. But it's actually already on my YouTube channel, because 2012 is when I started my YouTube channel. So, my YouTube channel was actually around for the launch. I even had videos on Sonic Lost World, which are probably terrible and old as shit, but I still have them. And, you know, I've basically been keeping up with the franchise over the course of the 2010s. So, yeah, that's how I got into Sonic. I started by watching the anime, 4Kids version, of course. I had friends who were into Sonic, and I played Shadow, because that was the one I saw most of. And I loved it. I loved it as a kid. At least I'm not lying to you. I have no reason to lie about that. Probably the only person who started the games with Shadow the Hedgehog, but oh well. Eventually I played the classics, because I played Mega Collection, and I played, Sonic Heroes, and Sonic Riders, Sonic Unleashed, dropped out of it, and I came back with Generations and caught up on the franchise, and here I am now.